got you now, mother.
It's more beautiful than I ever imagined.
Hey, Jarek here. F.E.A.R is now old enough to where if you grew up with F.E.A.R being influential to your gaming experience as a kid, you're old enough now to make your own F.E.A.R. I find F.E.A.R to be fascinating, because while it borrows a lot of things from Half-Life, most games did in the early 2000s, it's unique enough to be its own thing, and it sparked its own subgenre. I actually tweeted this out a few years ago. What do we call these games? And one of my viewers said, woo shooters. And I really liked that. This makes sense because the original F.E.A.R was heavily inspired by John Woo movies, especially the combat. It's gun fu, and when you shoot anything, there's sparks and explosions and just chaos in general. So yeah, woo shooter works quite well. And we've seen an influx of these woo shooters in the last few years. Severed Steel, Sulaco, and today's game, Trepang2. There's no Trepang1, by the way, it's just called Trepang2. I don't know what's with the title, it's kind of a bad title, but that's what it's called. Trepang2 is an obvious spiritual sequel to that of the original F.E.A.R, and I am all for it. But before I talk about whether or not Trepang2 is a worthy spiritual sequel or not, I need to thank today's sponsor, Into the AM. That's what this shirt's from. This is my own personal shirt. I wear this all the time. I like their products quite a bit. They're a clothing brand. Their clothes are incredibly soft. They're comfortable. They fit me well. I know that's a person-to-person thing, but I really like their fit on me. And they have a bunch of really cool designs, especially on their shirts. Into the AM is about to have a July 4th sale. 20% off site-wide. But if you don't want to wait for July 4th, then you can go to my link intotheam.com/dragonshirts and get 10% off site-wide, and that stacks on top of these deals. So huge thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about Trepang2. Much like in the original F.E.A.R, you play as a super soldier. You're called 106, and just as you would expect, you have the ability to slow down time. But unlike the original F.E.A.R, this doesn't recharge on its own. In order to get more slow motion, you need to kill more enemies. This is a really good thing, because the original F.E.A.R is kind of way too easy, even on the hardest difficulty mode, because you get so much slow motion. It would always recharge no matter what, you could use it liberally and never run out. But in this game, you're incentivized to kill more enemies to get more slow motion, to be more aggressive. And that carries over to your stamina. You see, just like Point Man, you have the ability to kick your opponents. You can slide into them, sending them to the moon. You can jump kick, knocking them down and stunning them. Or you can chain these two things together. Slide kicking gives you a ton of momentum, and then you can jump kick anyone across the entire room. Yeah, it's awesome. But your stamina is limited. That said, when you kill an enemy, you get stamina back. Again, this encourages you to play aggressively. The one thing I will say is that I'm not a huge fan that you can't kick if you're out of stamina. I think you should still be able to kick, just nothing else. Your next ability is where you differ from Point Man, and that's the ability to cloak. Now, when I first played the demo years ago, I assumed the cloak would work differently. I thought it'd work like Crisis, where if you move faster, the cloak drains faster. This is not the case. The cloak will always drain at the same speed, so the best method is to cloak and then just run in. I would usually use my cloak to get behind them and grab them, which is also something you can do. You can take them hostage, you can straight up murder them.
We gotta stay focused, stay with the team. It's just...
Or you can pull a pin on one of their grenades and kick them at their friends. It's so beautiful. But this stuff alone does not make a good woo shooter. There's a few things you really need to nail if you're inspired by F.E.A.R. The first one is the entire way combat is set up. Every combat arena is built like a multiplayer arena. The enemies have many different directions to go, and they're constantly barking orders at each other, making them seem a lot smarter than they are. You need to be able to walk into an arena, have a squad to take out, and make them feel like they're cooperating with each other. On top of this, your guns need to be satisfying. When you shoot a wall, it needs to take a chunk out of the wall. When you shoot an enemy, it needs to rip that enemy apart. There needs to be blood covering everything by the time you're done with this combat encounter. And thankfully, Trepang2 nails this. If anything, better than the original F.E.A.R. Maybe. Possibly. You can make that argument. Man, let's talk about these guns real quick. All of them feel great. Even the base pistol feels powerful. And then you get the vectors, which shooting an enemy sounds like you're ripping apart a wet rag. But of course, you can't make a game inspired by F.E.A.R. without a really good shotgun. And this holds that mantle up quite well. This thing is devastating. It sounds like a cannon and makes people jib like nothing else. I do have a complaint though. Every time you pull out the shotgun, you have to pump it. I have a complaint about this, not because it's unrealistic. I don't care about realism in a game like this, but because it makes it slow to pull out. That's what she said. Seriously, there's a lot of times where I'll jump kick someone and have another weapon out and want to pull my shotgun out because I'm right there in their face and I have to wait for this pump animation to end. If you want to keep it for the rule of cool, that's fine, but I should be able to interrupt it at least. Other than that though, this shotgun is a dream. You will carry it from the beginning of the game to the end. That's also kind of a problem because you can only carry 2 weapons, which really only turns into you can only carry a shotgun and another weapon. I kind of wish you could carry 3, which now that I think about it is also what F.E.A.R. did, and that might have been why F.E.A.R. did that. Moving on, the DMR is an SL8, which should look familiar to a gun in F.E.A.R., the G2A2, because the SL8 is what the G2A2 was based off of, and I'm sure the SL8 being in this game is not a coincidence. This thing is awesome. Slow motion headshots work at any range. It kills enemies stupidly fast. It's also the only gun in the game where you can scope or ADS or do whatever you want, so it's your only ranged option in the game. And then you get to this burst fire explosive harpoon launcher. Yeah, you heard that right. That's awesome.
This is Dagger 4. We lost the courtyard.
Unfortunately, it's kind of outclassed by the grenade launcher, which is the better explosive. And yeah, this also jibs enemies and makes everything else around it explode. But I think the harpoon launcher is my favorite gun in the game, because you can find upgrades or attachments for your weapons throughout maps. These little boxes will give you attachments, and in the case of the harpoon launcher, you can get rid of the explosive bit and just turn it into a regular harpoon launcher. You know, I've been calling it a harpoon launcher, but it's probably just a stake launcher. I don't know, it's this game's equivalent of the penetrator, and it has a devastating effect. It is so fun. I'm just willing to say that. Oh, it's so... I love this gun. It's so good. There's a few more weapons, but I think you get my point. None of them are redundant, and all of them are great. And while all the chaos is happening around you, there's this awesome metal music playing that fits what's going on. I didn't expect this. I heard music in the demo, but it didn't sound anything like this. I like it quite a bit. There's this quote about Bungie's motto being, if you can make 30 seconds of fun, you can make an entire game of fun. Something along those lines, and Trepang2 follows this to a T. So we've established that Trepang2 nails the combat, but F.E.A.R. did more than just combat. What about the horror? Well, Trepang2 doesn't do this quite well. I will say, horror isn't exactly completely required if you're inspired by F.E.A.R. I mean, combat is the star of the show. But Trepang2 wanted to try, kind of. After the opening level, you'll go to a safe house, and from here you can choose any mission you want to do. Some of these missions kind of try to be horror focused, but don't really do it very well. One of them literally has you go to the back rooms. There's a whole lot of build-up for a whole lot of nothing, and the build-up isn't particularly scary. You see, whether or not you feel like F.E.A.R. is scary, you can acknowledge that the atmosphere is perfect in F.E.A.R. It does this extremely well. It may not get you, but you're in that moment still.
Oh, fuck! I wasn't expecting the second guy either.
I will say Extraction Point did horror a lot better than the base game, but that's a topic for another video I already made. I'll put a link up there in the top left. Top right. Yeah, no, it's top right. There, it's up there. Trepang2 doesn't really do any of this, and it kind of just ends up getting in the way of the combat. There is one side level that starts building some tension actually quite well. This house is remarkably pretty. It's abandoned, there's obviously something going on. You go into the basement, and there is definitely atmosphere here. You have to turn on all these monitors while this weird anomaly chases you. Something gets angry and yells for some reason. And then you leave the basement and that's it. Build up for nothing. So yeah, I don't know. I can't help but feel like they half-assed this part. And while we're vaguely on the topic of horror, you will be fighting more than just your standard soldiers. Sometimes. There are mutant enemies that show up for all of one level and then you never see them again. These mutant enemies aren't terribly interesting. They kind of just act like zombies that can also spit acid at you. However, I was hoping this was going to branch out to a whole bunch of other unique enemies. That unfortunately isn't the case and never happened. Instead, we get a boss battle with the so-and-so Mothman, which is cool and I wanted more of this, but we never got any more. We also never got any of those combat encounters like say with the ninjas or those invisible red-eyed specter things.
Jesus. The fuck? That's gonna be a thing.
Like, there's so much more you can do with the lighting you have in this game, and they just didn't. But as I established, they got the most important thing right, and that's the combat. Including the grenades, which I forgot to talk about. F.E.A.R grenades are my favorite grenades of all time. They're contact grenades, they roll exactly where you need them to be, they cause this ridiculous shockwave effect, they're just awesome. And in Trepang2, they're literally the same, that's just what they are. You can even shoot them out of the air, just like in the original F.E.A.R. But you also have plenty of other options, like say landmines. Enemies will be smart enough to see these landmines and not walk over them. Like, I don't think I've ever seen an enemy blindly walk over a landmine. So screw it, I'll pick them up and throw them into the landmine myself. He ran into the mine, I kicked him into the mine. You'll also get incendiary grenades. And even tomahawks. So yeah, you have plenty of options here. And speaking of incendiary grenades, these voice actors gave up their voice for this game. The shotgun, which we established is already incredibly powerful, will also get Dragon's Breath rounds as one of the upgrades. You're going to be hearing a lot of yelling. And to double that yelling, a few levels into the game, you get a serum that allows you to dual wield. Don't know why I need to take a shot to use my left arm. Again, that makes no sense. I said that in the demo too, but whatever. We can dual wield now. And you can dual wield anything. Pistols, SMGs, even the pump action shotgun doesn't matter, you can dual wield it. As for performance, this is a pretty good PC release. I ran with everything on one notch below max settings. I even had DLSS turned on, which has some ghosting because this is an NVIDIA problem that keeps coming back. This is not the fault of the Trepang2 devs. NVIDIA's DLSS will have ghosting that'll come back with occasional updates. It'll fix itself, it's kind of annoying. Alternatively, you can just download an older version of DLSS and fix this yourself. But DLSS is there and it's worth using. You get a good FPS boost. Anyway, yeah, all the options you'd want are here. I really have nothing to complain about. Except the frame rate can occasionally be unstable when crazy things are happening, which is understandable considering how chaotic this game is. But for the most part, I was running well into the 100s, 200 FPS range at 1440. So yeah, good release, never had any crashes, things just worked. Until you get to the audio. There is some really weird mixing issues here. Sound effects are incredibly loud, voice acting will occasionally be incredibly quiet, and then again occasionally really loud for seemingly no reason.
Secondary objective is to recover his research. Avoid subject 106 at all costs. Horizon has backstabbed us. Kill the dirty traitors.
What I ended up doing is put the sound effects to 10%, the music to 25%, and voices to 45%. That's how messed up it is. And even then it was occasionally off. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but it definitely needs to be looked into. And now we move on to the story. Something that gets lost in a lot of conversations about F.E.A.R. is how F.E.A.R. told its story. I honestly think this is a little underrated because it always keeps you in that world. It definitely could have been done better, don't get me wrong, but I do still think it's quite good. You'll slowly get introduced to new characters and new players in a messed up situation and slowly learn where you came from and how Alma came to be. It's not that the story is particularly good, it's the reveal that's particularly good. Yeah, Trepang2 doesn't do any of this. The story is all over the place. I'll give the weakest spoiler warning of all time because I'm going to be honest, don't even care about getting spoiled about this game. You're playing it for the combat and the story is just not worth caring about. So why are you a super soldier? Why are you working with the secret facility? Why are you attacking Horizon? Who the hell knows? I'm not even convinced Horizon is a bad company. You're told they are, but you're not shown why they are. On one level, you end up fighting against a cult, which are pretty amusing enemies to fight. But the cult leader says something about breaking the cycle and refuses to elaborate, and then you have a boss battle, which there are quite a few boss battles, by the way, and they almost always play out the same way. Some angry guy barking orders and eventually comes out to attack you. These can be either quite good or end immediately. Anyway, yeah, the cult leader says something about breaking the cycle. This means absolutely nothing to you at the time, and honestly, still doesn't mean much. Like, there's no development in the story until quite literally the end of the game, the very last level, when you beat the final boss. You take down Horizon, you go back to your safe house, and then they try to backstab you. Oddly, that reminded me of Legendary of all games. You had been working peacefully, willingly with this group this whole time, and then they try to backstab you, even though you would have continued working with them. Anyway, yeah, apparently everybody was created for this cycle. There's a bunch of these clones. That's the whole story. Yeah, it's really not worth playing for the story. I'm not sure why the story even exists if they're trying this little. I mean, you already have a safe house and a menu where you're selecting different levels. That's all you kind of really needed. And speaking of, there is a wave mode you can play. That is quite fun. It's not revolutionary. You shoot enemies, the wave ends, you can buy new guns, shoot more enemies. You also get access to cheats when you beat the game. These cheats are absurd. You can make your guns fire knives. You can add ragdoll.
Everyone!
Oh my god!
My holy weapon is
Oh my god, it's breaking my frame rate. Ah! Too many cheats. Yeah, the game didn't seem to like it when I did that, but it was worth it. So, is Trepang2 worth it at the end of the day? I'm gonna have to say yes, absolutely yes. Yeah, it falls short in the story category and a lot of other ways, but does it really matter? You're focusing on the combat. That's what it does best. That's why you're playing the game. Again, if you can make 30 seconds of fun, you can make an entire game fun. Huge thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Again, go to intotheam.com/dragonshirts if you want to get 10% off site-wide, or wait till July 4th and get 20% off site-wide. Also, huge thanks to my channel members right over there. They get weekly shoutouts and get to see my videos at least a week ahead of time, usually more. If you want to become a channel member, just click the join button next to the subscribe button. Huge thanks to everyone that joined me over on Twitch. I marathoned this game all at once. It was definitely worth it. It was a ton of fun. I like hanging out with you guys. If you want to come hang out, click that link at the bottom right and follow my Twitch. My Twitter handle is down there in the bottom left if that's your thing, Jarek_Dragon. And a huge thanks to all of you for watching this video.